Hey, what's going on? It's your boy KAG, and today we are going to be covering another patent. Now, I haven't done a patent in a while, but this one is a pretty big one. And so I figured we go ahead and we cover what is actually provided inside of this actual patent, because it has a lot of information here regarding the Nintendo Switch. But rather than actually going through this whole patent, what we're going to do is we're just going to pretty much discuss this patent as a whole. Now, on here we have a few things here. Notably, we have our Switch Joy-Cons over here on the sides. We also have the plus and minus button, which are located right here at the top, although it doesn't technically show that in this image. This would be your start and your select button, in case anybody is wondering. And down here towards the bottom, we also have a share button, or as they call it in the actual patent, they call it the record button. And then we have our Joy-Cons right here, which also have your A, B, X, and Y's. And this is like a D-pad, which they actually note that in the patent that you could actually get a Joy-Con that actually has a traditional D-pad. So there'll be different Joy-Cons, like we discussed in the previous video maybe. Or it might have been a couple videos back, but they noted that there will be different types of Joy-Cons on this device. We have two speakers right here down towards the bottom, speaker grills, IR reader. It also goes on to say that on here there is a IR camera on this actual right Joy-Con, and what it can do is that Joy-Con camera can actually take your pulse, as well as be able to identify who's actually using the system. But not only that, but it can also do some gesture control, so it can recognize hand gestures as well as do like Wii pointer functionality. So like if you were going to be using it as a Wiimote, you technically could do that with this controller right here. Moving on, they actually discuss the screen. They do not say whether or not it's going to be a capacitive or resistive screen, but pretty much confirmed that it's going to be a capacitive, and that is going to be multi-touch, and that is coming from Laura Kate Dale. So that's what we know about that. As far as the system itself, they actually have a magnetic reader that is located right down here. And that magnetic reader, what it does is it's kind of like the iPad. So if you technically put something in front of it, it would know to shut the screen off. Kind of like how the actual iPads and the covers work. So if you put that and it makes contact here, it actually goes ahead and it shuts off the display. That way it's not actually running. Now, they did make note that the reason why the Switch actually has that piece that goes in front of it, like right here in the front of it when you actually dock it, is because technically the Switch can actually display on both screens at the same time. But because they didn't want to confuse anybody, they actually went ahead and they put the big huge cover in front of it. But you know, technically it doesn't really need it, but yeah, it just actually blocks the screen from being able to be displayed. But technically it can display to both the screen, your TV, and the actual Switch itself at the same time. So that's just something interesting to note there. Let's see, what else did we have to cover? Okay, as far as the actual Switch and when it's docked and when it's not docked, we do know that it actually upscales when it actually gets docked into the TV dock. Not technically upscaling, but it actually shows the resolution at a higher resolution. So for example, if this is a 720p display, which I believe it is, that means that rather than them trying to actually display 1080p on this display and using up the battery life, they actually just display it when it's actually docked in on the TV. It also has a processor fan that's rolling in there, and that processor fan actually slows down and is limited. That way when you actually have the Nintendo Switch closer towards you or towards your face, or when using it, it doesn't sound loud while you're trying to play your game. because they don't want that for it to be loud and you hear the fan spinning and all of that while you're trying to play. So not saying that it can't be used with it, but they rather have it unthrottled when it's in the dock, and that way it can actually go ahead and push out more at one time and actually have the fan going at full speed because it's not right next to you. So when you have this dock like next to your TV, you're not gonna have it right next to you or right next to your face. So they figure, okay, we can use it that way when it's docked, and then when you take it on the go with you, it actually saves on battery life and other things like that. Another thing to note is that this does actually have a sleep mode. A lot of people was wondering if it would have a sleep mode, but it does have a sleep mode. So yeah, even though your device is on, it technically can be in like a sleep mode of sorts. That way it's not killing your battery. Although they really do need to work on that with the 3DS, but hopefully they figure that out with the Nintendo Switch. Is there anything else to cover? Outside of that, we know that there is micro SD storage, although they say SD storage, but judging by the actual image down here on the bottom left hand corner, there is actually a SD card slot. I believe it's micro SD, just to be honest with y'all and looking at the images. And of course, y'all know the kickstand is there, so that's nothing nothing out of the ordinary. Also, there is one other interesting thing about this device, and that is the fact that there is plans for some type of head-mounted device. Now, whether or not it's used for VR, we don't really know, but more than likely it probably will, considering the way the controllers are. Technically the controllers have batteries in them as well as rumble in them and accelerated gyroscopes. There's a bunch of, accelerometers, excuse me. There's a lot of actual information going on in these Joy-Cons. I'll be amazed to see how actually long the battery lasts on there, because there's a lot of tech inside these controllers. So, as far as like games like Splatoon and things like that, you technically could use the Joy-Cons for like the gyroscopes and stuff like that. But the Joy-Cons have all the same information inside of them, like the gyroscopes, accelerometers, all of that inside of them, as well as the Nintendo Switch tablet device itself also has all of that in there. So yeah, that's a lot going on there. So you technically have about 3 gyroscopes and 3 accelerometers all inside of each individual device. The actual controller unit, the puppy dog controller, that's pretty much just a battery pack, and you can technically charge it by itself, so you don't really have to have like the Joy-Cons hooked up to it, but you can plug that controller in and you can charge the battery in the center of it, and then you can slide the Joy-Cons in to actually use the controller. But yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff going on here. As far as this device right here, this will technically be the real first, if they actually go through with this and they actually do the whole VR or head-mounted device, head-mounted display, excuse me. If they do technically go with this, this will be the first truly gaming device that is actually portable, as far as like VR goes, or a head-mounted display. I mean, granted, yes, you have your Galaxy phones and things like that are out there, but this is an actual gaming device that you can take on the go with you, and it will actually display your games on it. So technically what you could be doing, considering it's called the Nintendo Switch, they're giving you some options here. You can play on your TV, right? When you're at home, you can play on your TV. If you're on the go, you can play on the Nintendo Switch, and use the actual controllers. You can even go ahead and instead of holding it in your hand, you can put the kickstand up and you can set it down and have like a TV experience where you're not actually holding that and you're still holding the controller. And then they also give you the option for if you wanted to technically either do VR or if you just want to play on a bigger screen on the go. So for example, if you put this on your head, you could probably be seeing maybe a 70 something inch screen or higher. It could technically be even bigger than that, as well as considering the actual width of the actual screen, because I believe it's close to about 7 inches. I believe it's pretty close there. This will actually have an extremely wide viewing angle. A lot of them are kind of narrow, but they might actually have a huge viewing angle, and depending on how they actually do it, they could be having so that each eye is shown a separate display, or they could have it so that it's shown one display. But it all depends on how they're doing that. But you also have to consider if the resolution on the screen is 720p, how good will the game actually look with the screen head mounted to your head, unless they do some type of trickery there and they figured out a way to work around the actual pixel count and the screen door effect. But it will all be kind of interesting to see how they actually go ahead and come out with this. But anyways, let me know what y'all think about all this down there in the comment section. If you are interested in being able to play on the go with VR, AR, whatever, let me know down there in the comment section. And as always, don't forget to subscribe because it's free. And I'm out of here. Peace.